Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is set to end the sequel trilogy and the Skywalker saga itself by writer and director J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio. This is Mike Zero. If you guys are new to the channel, do make sure to subscribe to see future Star Wars content. Now, one thing about this film that a lot of people are really looking forward to seeing is, of course, all the different connections to the prequels and the originals and exactly how J.J. Abrams is going to utilize all of these different connections in Star Wars Episode 9. Now, these past couple of weeks or so, we've been learning a whole lot more about this film, and when it all comes down to one of the concept art descriptions, this is where things begin to get very exciting and intriguing for characters like Kylo Ren, Rey, Supreme Leader Snoke, and even Emperor Palpatine. Now, specifically, a description of Kylo Ren inside of a dark environment where it's said that he is walking on a metallic bridge. It's described that he is holding Rey's hand in this sequence, as it's described to have something to do with both a Force bond and the beyond. The next describes both Kylo Ren and Rey witnessing both figures of the Emperor Palpatine figure and Supreme Leader Snoke, side by side with the echoes of their voices in the distance. However, it's described that Snoke's face is obscured with a hood over his head, and is in a black cloak. It's described that the figures of Emperor Palpatine and Snoke begin to get closer to both Kylo and Rey as they begin to shift and vanish into thin air, and where the environment around them begins to morph. It's implied that this is a new kind of Force vision of some kind that is induced by Kylo Ren. So I want to go over a couple of parts about this. Now, we do know that J.J. Abrams is bringing back the whole entire idea of Force bond sequences and is really going to incorporate this into the story between both Kylo Ren and Rey in a very unique way and evolving what Rian Johnson introduced in The Last Jedi between those two characters. So this, without a doubt, is a very interesting dream sequence or a vision sequence, whatever have you. Not quite sure exactly what the significance of it all really means or what the actual dream sequence and or vision sequence is actually going to do for these characters, but nonetheless, it seems as though that Kylo Ren and Rey will be going through something very interesting of what J.J. Abrams is putting together in this movie. Now, we saw an example of something like this in The Last Jedi, where both Kylo Ren and Rey were holding hands. However, in this scenario, they're doing the same exact thing, except across space and time, and they're able to do this remotely while they're seeing moments of the past. Now, I don't know about you guys, but how it's described that there's a metallic bridge and how it's described to be in a dark environment, it tells me that this is their version of the Worlds Between Worlds from Star Wars Rebels Season 4. And how Snoke is actually described to be a different figure with a hood over his head and in a black cloak next to Emperor Palpatine. As they get closer to both Kylo and Rey as they vanish, it once again tells us that this most likely is either a vision or Kylo and Rey going through a different realm, seeing moments of the past basically, and this is very similar to what we saw in Season 4 of Rebels. Now, with that being said, is this a good or a bad thing to do in order to apply this to a live action film? You know, we can always think about all these different things from Star Wars Rebels that are being inserted into Star Wars Episode 9. However, when you think about live action, it's all a matter of how it's written and executed on the big screen that really makes it work or not work. And I think that's the big concern about this movie, is that J.J. Abrams really is doing a lot of wild and crazy things with this film that may or may not feel like Star Wars at the end of the day if it's not executed perfectly. So that's one thing to think about. Second is that introducing, both Palpatine and Snoke near each other, it really does bring up the question, could this very well be a little hint and or a signal that maybe Snoke was a puppet of Emperor Palpatine all this time? And we're going to actually figure out exactly what was going on between those two characters in the sequel trilogy. Now, that episode, The Worlds Between Worlds in Star Wars Rebels Season 4, I will say is probably one of my favorite episodes because it introduced a different level of Star Wars lore that we have never seen before, where it's something like time travel, but it's not necessarily time travel. We have that moment in which Ezra Bridger saves Ahsoka Tano from Darth Vader from a moment in the past. It's more around the lines of flow walking, which it's kind of like time travel, but at the same exact time, it's not. So I think that's the exact reason as to why J.J. Abrams was in, of course, a lot of talks with Dave Filoni, who, by the way, is the showrunner of Rebels Season 4, and how he actually borrowed a lot of elements from Star Wars Rebels and is putting that into Star Wars Episode 9. So all these different sequences coming into this movie, it does make one wonder, what kind of lore or other types of lore can we expect to be inserted into the final film of the sequel trilogy that is really going to change our views on not just The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, Awakens, but the entire Skywalker saga as a whole. That's one thing to really think about right now. Now, in case you guys did not know, Supreme Leader Snoke is by far one of my favorite characters in the sequel trilogy, and I just wish that he had just a little bit more screen time in The Last Jedi, or was maybe going to be more explored in either, other forms of canon under Disney and Lucasfilm, like books, novels, and stuff like that. Thankfully, we are getting a comic line this, of course, November of 2019. Anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to morning.